This isn't much of a teaser, but today we're going to dabble into the world of divorce on the Manspace. Welcome to the Manspace podcast. We're your hosts, Doctors Rob Porter and clinical therapist Mike Porter. Welcome, spacemen, to a somber episode.
I was going to say, it feels real somber there, buddy.
Of the Manspace. It's actually not that somber, but here's what I thought about this topic in particular. We've talked about this, that we both, I think all three of us. Matt's not here again, by the way. Everybody.
Yeah, sorry, Maddie.
So if you're looking for who's your favorite spaceman, it should not be Matt. He's missed a lot of episodes.
Although I do hear from a lot of people, they really like Matt.
I know. I think the one person who's never missed an episode is you.
No.
After the beginning when we didn't let you have a microphone? I feel like you've been here on...
Have you and Matt not ever done...
In the very beginning, Matt and I did like 2 without you.
Well, you did like 4 or 5 without me.
Well,
we did the initial, and then I think I was out for like 5 episodes.
Yeah. But then, like, I've been sick once, and the thing cut me out on one. Oh, you got cut out on one, but that's not the same thing.
Which one did I get cut out on?
I can't remember what it was.
Yeah.
You just
it was I kept dropping it. We were interviewing somebody.
Yeah. That's what happened with Brad Kennington. It made me so angry. Matt's always the one I feel like who, like if he's not here, I don't know where we're going to go.
Right.
There's just too much possibility.
We miss you, Matt.
He's not going to listen to this.
Sometimes he does.
That's true on the way up.
Yeah, sometimes he tells us he listened to...
He's currently on a humanitarian house building thing with his daughter.
Oh, yeah.
Something like that, right? He's on a technology detox, he said.
Yeah,
he
I was
texted
going to
last
say,
night. I was like, cheater.
Well, I think it's probably more for the kids.
Oh, well, he said he doesn't really have any access to it.
Yeah.
Dude, I'm changing subjects rapidly.
Sure.
I don't know why.
Why not?
Because my brain just went here. So you saw that somebody, I can't remember who it was, just signed the biggest contract in NBA.
No.
It's like $350 million for 5 years.
Wow.
You know who Mbappe is?
Yeah.
French soccer player, really good.
Yeah.
He got picked up from Paris Saint-Germain or whatever it is.
Yeah. To
go to a Saudi team.
Yeah.
$766 million for 1 year.
For 1 year?
Yeah. Guy got paid almost $1 billion for 1 year.
Son of a gun.
I mean,
which that's where the whole LIV golf came from.
I know.
Is that they were like, no, these people are going to pay us a junk ton of money to come do this.
Yeah.
And people were frustrated with the PGA. And
also, did you see that? Because Lionel Messi is here now.
Lionel Messi.
He plays for Inter Miami.
Yeah.
And Rooney, I want to say Wayne Rooney. He was
Art Rooney?
No, English soccer player who is now I want to say New York Red Bulls. Well, one of the New York teams, he's their head coach. He kind of gave a word of warning to Lionel Messi, like, "Hey, man, it's actually a pretty hard league." Like, and then it said in his first 2 games, he's got 3 goals and 1 assist. And it's like, so it's not. In his first game, he came in as a sub halfway through, and had like a penalty kick, or a free kick, and did his signature curve around the people and goes up in the corner. And it's like, that guy is so good. No, he's 38 and he's like, la, la, la.
No, that's the thing. Like, it's one of those where, sure, I get the league is probably tougher than outside the United States it's given credit for sure.
Yeah, probably. But we also
he's talking to the best soccer player in the world.
But our MLS All-Star team got destroyed by like Arsenal.
Yeah.
It was like 5-0.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh man.
There's a reason that there are very few Americans who go play in Europe.
I think over time we will get better.
Sure.
Over time. The league is getting stronger. MLS. Yes. I love watching it.
Yeah.
I also like watching.
I don't watch it,
but watching the English Premier League.
Yeah. Where do we watch
Oh, NBC airs their games.
Oh, that's right. On whatever. Yeah.
The first game I watched was Liverpool. And so I was like, well, I guess that's my team. And there was a guy in there whose name I cannot remember anymore. He's like the nicest guy in the world. Like, wouldn't buy he had like a cracked cell phone screen. They're like, why do you have a cracked cell phone? Why don't you just buy a new? He's like, because I send my money back to my family back in, it was like
wherever he is
from. And I was like, that guy's awesome.
Yeah.
So I'm going to buy Liverpool hat. So to get into our episode,
Yeah.
I will say up front, I have a little bit of like hesitation about this
How come?
topic. I have strong feelings about it, but I also understand that there's always two sides to any story.
Yeah.
And so there's no way of knowing if, like, we're speaking about divorce, but specifically, at least the thinking I had was I've worked with so many people, men and women, where after divorce, a husband who was previously engaged and involved is now like totally checked out. And the two sides of the story there is I know that there's for sure cases where he seems checked out, but he's being blocked.
Yeah.
And I know there are some where not every dad checks out.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm only going to speak, I guess, today in this episode to talk about some things I've seen and principles that I think need to be reiterated and addressed. Like this has to be, you have to pay attention to this. Not to say that like I'm shaming somebody for whatever situation they've been in or like, and I don't know the circumstances. So
Right.
if you're divorced and listen to this and you feel like I don't get it, I think, yeah, probably not. One of the plans we have for the show, and we're getting this topic earlier than I was thinking initially, but it's fine. Only because this keeps coming up in my sessions.
Yeah, I've had it come up with a couple of different people.
But what I want to do is an episode where we have, because divorce is such a weird, complex, emotionally all over the place experience. I want to bring on an attorney to interview to talk about what they see and what they like perspectives, but also here's some things to keep in mind. Partly because, one of the things, like I was trained, I guess I actually technically have a certification in discernment counseling, which part of why that was happening is because you get these attorneys who people are showing up for divorce and the attorneys are like, you guys aren't ready to do this. Why don't you go figure out if you actually want to do this?
Yeah.
And so that's partly how discernment counseling even came to be.
I didn't know that.
And so I'd be curious to see their perspectives from what they see, also tips. But then I want to talk about divorce and interview somebody from their perspective as a male, and then somebody from their perspective as a female. Obviously, in none of these situations can anybody speak for all experiences. Like no male could say this is what it's like for men, period, in divorce. They can say this was my experience with divorce.
Which is, I mean, that's really true of every topic we talk about. There's a personalization to any topic that is going to be slightly unique.
Right.
It's why, like, when we work with people that have depression or anxiety, sure, we can talk very knowingly about like certain things because there are certain things that are pretty much across the board, but there are aspects of it that will make it uniquely personal to that individual.
And my final disclaimer along those lines is that I know, statistically speaking, even women are more likely to seek out therapy than men.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a higher likelihood that I will be working with a single divorced female who's complaining about an ex-husband.
Checked out husband. Yeah.
I do, however, work with divorced husbands. Who are seeking therapy out. And this is partly where I'm like, I got to put all this stuff out on the table in the beginning. They seem to be more invested, generally speaking, than like as fathers. In some of them, it's like they are the basically primary parent.
Yeah.
And I think, you're also showing up to therapy.
Right.
Is there a correlation between those two, like investment and, maybe not. So I'm just going to speak to some things that I see that bother me that are kind of, in some of them too, they're stereotypes, but I've seen it so many times that it's like, seriously? And also, obviously, stereotypes, we don't just like, someone doesn't wake up and think, I think I'll make a stereotype like this.
Stereotypes come about for a reason.
Right. There is, you shouldn't just blanket put people into stereotypes.
No, but they still...
All right. So, enough disclaimers.
Okay.
Prepare yourselves, cadets.
Sorry, before you get into it, I did get a text from Evan this morning. He goes, hey, it's cool if I'm the only space officer. Everyone else can be cadets.
Private first class.
Right? Space Officer Evan.
I was just thinking about shows because I was like, what shows are you watching? But I won't. My wife and I just recently, I will for a second, apparently. We just finished watching the first season of Silo on Apple TV.
Yeah.
It's good.
Is it?
Yeah, there's some cheesy stuff in it,
Sure.
like some bad writing and some bad acting, but overall very good. So, I mostly just wanted to blow on somebody's ear. Now Robbie's gonna have to keep that in there because otherwise people are like, I wanted to blow on somebody's ear. What does that mean? Rob just said that out of nowhere. What a freaking weirdo! I am a weirdo. So, what do you feel like? I'll start with this way. Make you be the bad guy first.
Thanks, man.
I really have this hesitation because I feel like I understand the complexity. I tell clients when they say I think I'm going to get divorced, I will say, just so you know, there will always be something, at least one thing, that no matter what we talk about or what any attorney tells you about, you will not be prepared for.
Yeah,
they'll ask me, what is it? And I'll say, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's different for every person.
It's
so this is such a complex thing, and it's so riddled with like the idea of failure that it's a hard thing for people to talk about and engage in. And
it's like, it's the thing I always say is, look, it's going to be harder than you think it is.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I've sat across people and like, I mean, things are going to go pretty smooth. I'm like, no. It's going to be harder than you think. Like, things might go smooth.
Right.
But at some point you'll find it. It's what you're talking about, right? At some point you're going to find that thing where it's like, oh, I wasn't expecting this. It's like, right. Because you can't,
right.
There's too much emotion involved in this to really have it be as simple as everyone thinks it's going to be.
So I guess I will say this at the outset. My hope is that anybody listening to this who is divorced, or who may be contemplating it, right, or may be divorced in the future, that you'll at least ask yourself some questions. I'm not deciding for you if you are or are not an involved good dad or not.
No.
But it also came into my head because last episode was about
dads.
Yeah. Schlub dads and
dads in the media.
So I'll just say, what's the stereotype of a divorced dad?
I mean, the stereotype is dad's divorced and he doesn't care. Like, there's a couple of stereotypes that come readily to mind. The first one is that dad's just checked out altogether, right? The absentee father.
Right.
The other one that comes pretty readily to mind is, and it does stereotypically, right? Like, I recognize this isn't true, but stereotypically it feels like men are going to start dating first. And if they're dating someone who has a family, or if they're dating someone and they begin a family, that the first kids don't matter anymore. It's all about the new family.
Yeah.
And so dad will check out in that way, right? Where he's not really checking out. He just clearly the emphasis is on the new.
Yeah. It's funny, as we're sitting here, I'll share this later, but I just came up with this theory on for dads, because I've seen dudes that I have been surprised, like, oh, you're checking out.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and it's like, I don't understand why you were this kind of dad before. Why? What is happening? So I have a theory that hopefully puts men in a context when this happens. There are some dudes that I think really do just kind of like, it's a sense of freedom.
Yeah.
I think there's something that's interesting that happens in that we've talked about before. This is at least my theory. I don't think I'm the only one who has this theory, but that women and moms, because of like, I created this thing in my belly, in my stomach. That's how it works, I think. So if I understand human physiology pretty well,
it's all happening in the tummy.
Physiology. I like that. Physiology. That's not even a word.
Nope. Sure isn't.
Matt, come here back and make us sound smart.
Use big words, Matt.
So I do think that moms in particular have like an innate, that's not the right word, but a specific, even biological bond differently than men do.
Yeah.
To how they connect to their children. And I think it's harder I've seen it happen though, where like moms just check out and they're like, I'm out.
Yeah.
But I think it is harder for women to do it than it is for men.
Yeah.
And there's other factors besides just the fact that women created the kid inside their belly.
Yeah.
But, and that's one of the things I'll mention at the end, but it is, I think that's part of this picture is like, I've seen dudes do this because, well, there's freedom. It's like, now I got to do whatever I want. The responsibility is lifted at least one week out of the, every other or whatever it is, or Thursdays and every other weekend. And
right. And that's the thing, like some of it from a legal standpoint, most states, Texas is certainly one of them, the default is mom. Like mom's going to better care for him. She's going to be better equipped to handle the ins and outs. And we've talked about it before, right? Like maybe we have it on here, but when teachers call mom first. They don't call dad unless they've specifically been told don't call mom.
Right.
They always like if I had to call a parent, no, I was always going to start with mom.
Yeah.
Because even when I knew they both worked, I knew she was more likely to answer the phone call from the school. Even if it was the middle of her workday, the dad was less likely to do it.
This is what's interesting. And I guess I'm jumping ahead of myself, but I think, I don't know that I had an agenda. Well, it's not true. I do have some things that I feel like, hey, think about this thing. But it is kind of funny to me. I think we have set it up as a society, as a structural, even like when you say Texas, I think, yes, Texas is a conservative state. And so it's more likely to follow conservative lines where it's like the husband's going to be the breadwinner, the dad will be the breadwinner, and the mom will be the primary caretaker. And even if that's not the case, at least in this state, that's in many states, that's often how it plays out.
Default, yeah.
And often it's how plenty of people want it. I don't know. Want's the wrong term. I don't think there are for sure some parents, not just dads, but dads for sure, who feel like, yeah, I'll take, I want my kids, but when it comes down to it, it's like, well, how much do you want them? You could have taken them this much, but you only took them this much.
You could have had them 50%.
Yeah, but you didn't take them 50%.
But you settled for Thursdays and every other weekend.
Well, or even then, it's not even just that. And I understand there's complexity in the settling of things of like, well, what am I giving up to get this, this, and this? But there's also, even when they have 50%, they don't use 50%.
Yeah.
I've talked to plenty of people where it's like they are talking about, like, I mean, I've seen it tons of times where it's 50%, they're using 35.
Yeah.
Or sometimes not even that. So I think what is interesting to me is to think about, I've said this before, in a culture that we exist in that says basically, even though it doesn't say this directly, it has said it directly for decades, that a dad's place is really outside the home, earning money and providing for the family in that way. It's not a bad thing.
No.
We've gotten better about saying, and research shows like kids need dads and kids fare much better when dads are around. Mm-hmm. But we have not lost still the idea that men should be out earning money.
Right.
And so many men, our identity is totally wrapped into how much money I earn, even wrapping that into what kind of dad am I? Yeah. I feel like I'm a good dad because I earned $250,000 a year or whatever it is.
Which generally I think as guys, we tend to associate it to, I'm able to therefore do things like I'm able to take my kids on cool vacation. Like my kids get to go to Disneyland. Right. Why? Because I earn $250 a year.
Right.
Right. It's all correlated in our heads.
Yeah. I can provide activities for my kids and it's all, but it's providing.
But it does tend to make you like, yeah, I can have my kid play select baseball.
Right.
Which is a super expensive sport. Like once you start getting into the select stuff, it's crazy expensive.
Right.
But they're like, yep. And I have a job that lets me go and spend the weekends traveling with my kid.
Right.
And I think, I didn't have one of those jobs.
Right. Yeah. I like honestly,
even still,
I don't like that in my head. If my wife and I were to get divorced, I don't like that. I think I could see how easily I could slip into, not even intentionally, slip into less engagement with my kids than I had previously.
So this isn't, go ahead.
Can you keep that? Or are you going to lose it?
No, I can keep it.
because I'll just say, because I'm only halfway through this thought of like,
no, you're okay.
when I look at dads and I think, oh, I do see that now that I'm divorced, I don't know, I didn't do, for some, it's like I didn't do all the nurturing stuff that now I'm supposed to do.
Right.
So I'll just keep doing what I do.
Right.
And so it's not even they're trying to be checked out. It's like
No,
I'm
show
doing
up for
what
sports. I show up
I
for
do the stuff I know how to do. And so
Yeah.
when you're here with me, I'm excited to hang out with you. And so let's go to Disneyland.
Yeah.
And then you get the name Disneyland Dad. But it's like,
Yeah.
I just want to hang out with my kids. It was fun.
Yeah.
And I wanted to do something.
That's what I did before. I didn't have to do the other
Right.
stuff.
And if mom has them all the time,
Yeah.
or more of the time, then she is more likely to have to deal with all the other boring, mundane stuff. Now, hopefully it doesn't go that way, but it happens that way. Anyway, so continue with your thought.
Well, it's interesting. I wonder if you've seen at all a correlation in checked out dads versus the age of their children.
I've not seen anything research. I haven't looked.
No. I mean, just anecdotally. Because no, I haven't done that research either. Although I have a theory about it.
Your theory is what? That they would be more engaged as they're teenagers and less engaged?
I think they'll be less engaged for a handful of reasons. And
most
of them not their fault.
I don't know that I don't know that I've, as I'm thinking through, honestly, if you just went anecdotally, I'd say the majority of people I've seen that check out, I'm not saying that they all do, the ones that I've seen that have checked out, it happens almost immediately. It doesn't matter the age. It's just when divorce happens, I'm out.
Right, which I've seen that too. But again, like, to me, I'm thinking back to some of, because I work with, with my specialization, I work with a lot of kids, and I work with a lot of divorced, kids of divorced parents, and I've done some co-parenting things. And I think when they're younger, and it requires you to be more hands-on. Now, yeah, if you from the get-go are saying, no, I'm going to go every Thursday and every other weekend.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. That, like, and I have seen that from the beginning. Right. But I think of some that I know, and, nope, he's got the kids every other week, and he's super involved, and he's super checked in. And I think, right, his kids are also very young. Like, it requires more from him simply to have them 50% of the time, right? They can't as readily hang out with their friends. They can't as readily get themselves places.
Yeah.
When kids reach a certain age, like typically at 12, if custody is an issue, at 12, they'll start taking in, and it may be even a little bit sooner. I haven't looked into that recently, but typically at 12, they'll start considering the want of the child, right? They're not going to simply give the child what they want. But if the child is saying, hey, I don't want to live 50% of the time with dad, no, that's going to be taken into account. A 6-year-old, no, they're not going to take that into account. They're just going to say, sorry, dude, this is what's best for you.
Right.
But as they get older, that starts to happen more. By 16, I can't think of a judge who's going to enforce any kind of, if the kid is saying, I'm not going, the judge is not going to say you have to go. The judge is going to say, okay.
Yeah, although that actually
16.
can vary by state about when they let a kid say, I don't want to.
Right. And that's where, like I said, I haven't looked into the actual ages.
Right.
But, and I've heard it as young as 14.
Right.
And certainly by 18, they have no legal anything.
Right.
Right. But I think you look at the developmental stages of a teen. Yeah, 14 is when they start recognizing, hey, there are other opinions beyond moms and dads, and other people's opinions become much more important to them than moms and dads. There's a natural pulling away that happens between 14 and 18 anyway. It's why kids, like, parents push against it. I'm like, no, you need this to happen. This is why your kid's going to leave the house when they're 18 or 20. If you don't let this happen, your kid's never leaving. Like, your kid's going to stay because they don't know how to function outside of here. Because when they wanted to pull away, you kept them from doing it. And so kids, there's a natural pull away from parents anyway. And then kids internalize things in ways that we never anticipate. And I think, no, it's really easy. Like, I, again, thinking of some of the people I work with, I think, oh, and one of them, I'm like, I can't, typically I can get to a place where I can see how a kid is seeing it. I've got one guy in particular, I can't get to how his kid sees it. Like I've tried to come at it from different angles to try to put myself in the kid's position so that I can help dad kind of understand where things are at. I can't see it. And I'm just like, yeah, I got nothing. She's internalizing stuff he's done in a way, and she will not budge. And I think, yeah, he's doing from a, checklist standpoint. No, he's doing everything the way he should. Like, he and I have worked really a lot for him to kind of rebuild his relationship with his kids. And yeah, and so I think, yeah, there is an aspect of she's clearly internalized something, and without me talking to her, I don't know what it is, but there's something that for her is a huge block for her and her dad that I'm like, I can't, I'm sorry, dude. Like, I can't tell you how to get through that. Like, I don't know what it is. So I don't know what we're dealing with.
Right.
Cause she's not talking. And so I think, yeah, at that point, like, right, that's less in dad's control. There's less he can do. The kid's saying, no, I don't want to engage.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. And in that context, like, I can see, because I know some divorced dads who are very involved with their kids and their teenagers.
Mm-hmm.
But it is kind of weird. I've thought before, like, if you don't have the right housing situation, meaning you're both very close by to each other, then having your teenager come over means you're not hanging out with your friends this weekend. Yep. And when you're 15 and 16, it's like, that's all I want to do.
Right.
And if you and mom were married, I wouldn't be hanging out with you on a Saturday.
Right. I'd be with my friends.
Right.
Yeah. And that's, like, I do think, right, like, again, I can think of some other guys where it's like, yeah, it became like, I didn't quite get it initially why it was so important that his turning 16-year-old kid had a car. And I thought, oh, right.
He can get to you.
Because, yeah, he wants his kid to have the freedom to be where he wants to be, despite the fact that he doesn't live necessarily near mom.
Right.
And so it's worth that expense to him to make sure that his kid can get where he needs and wants to be, no matter what.
Right. It's interesting, though, because I look at this and it's like I said, this is something that I have, when I sit with clients, I sometimes will listen to these stories and feel like super annoyed at the other parent. And I do mean other parent because sometimes I'm sitting with a divorced male thinking about the mom and thinking, seriously, how do you just check out like that?
Yeah.
I also know I'm sitting in the room with one person.
Right. You're getting half a story.
I'm getting a very biased half a story, not just half a story. And so I know that, and I understand, and I know how to put people in context and all that crap that therapists do, and blah, blah, blah. And we empathize. But
therapy words.
It's probably like a website name, company name. Therapy Works, Austin. Oh, in fact, there is.
Okay, well, I said therapy words.
Oh,
not works. Therapy words.
Another article, by the way, about the increase of therapy speak.
Oh, yeah.
Different from the one we talked about previously.
Yeah.
It's funny. It does make me feel like I already feel like this when I say stuff. I'm like, everyone knows this.
Right.
And with therapy speak, it's like everyone does. Except I'm like, no, you don't know. Stop using that word. That's not what that means.
Right.
Yeah. Funny. Okay. So also one more side note. I can't help it. This should not be edited out.
Robbie.
I just saw an awesome, I don't know what it was for. It must have been ads for Nice Guys, Russell Crowe and Ryan
Gosling.
And it's like Russell Crowe and like a therapist or an interventionist waiting for Ryan Gosling to come in to intervene on all the merch that has like Ryan Gosling's face all over it that says, "Hey girl," and Ryan Gosling's like, "I didn't do this stuff. This is not me." It's so Ryan Gosling is hilarious and dreamy.
Oh my gosh.
But back to all this of like thinking, it is interesting to think through. Like, I don't know. I can say it's weird. It's hard to be a dad and know what your place is as a dad. We all, in theory, we know what our place is, but we don't really.
No.
And we don't know how to relate to each other very well as men. And so we don't know how to relate to very well sometimes to our kids. Some of us are really good at it. I'm not one of those people.
No, and it's funny because thinking about it, I think, men more than women that I interact with, men are the ones who are more often that will say things like, well, but I want it to happen organically, or I want it to happen spontaneously.
Right.
Which is some of the most flawed thinking.
Yeah, it's
for me.
It's kind of funny. I think maybe from the beginning, moms were just like, well, I have to get in there and be a mom. And dads are like, I don't know what to do.
Right. Well, and
what am I supposed to do until my kid can play sports? I don't know. I'll talk to him when he's 5.
Some of the checkout that happens, right? Like, I think some of it looks like checkout, but it's not really. Really, they're involved just as much as they were before. But, sometimes dad tries to insert himself and he's told he's doing it wrong.
Right.
Or, well, you're not doing it in the right way. Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm just going to wait over here until you tell me how I'm supposed to do it.
Right.
And now that we're divorced, you don't do that anymore.
Right. And all I know is that I don't know how to do it.
Yeah. I know that everything I ever tried, I was told was wrong.
I'm not a good dad, but now I'm supposed to be one.
Right.
Yeah.
With a kid that I haven't developed a relationship with.
Right.
Right. Like going back to the episode of probably a month ago or so now, where we talked about the amount of influence a parent has on their kid. The one, to me, the thing that throws a wrench in the numbers, it comes down to relationship. The better relationship I have with my kid, the more influence I retain.
Right.
If I have a really good relationship with my kid, then yeah, at 20, I'm still going to have influence.
Right.
Right. If I've spent years building that relationship, then yeah, I'm going to know how to at least to continue to maintain that relationship with my kid after the divorce.
Right. I will say it is tricky, in fairness, at least for some, that divorce becomes so drawn out and long term that relationships with kids will often suffer.
Yeah.
And you don't want to make your kids, you're like, my relationship with your mom is falling apart, so I'm going to lean on you.
Right. Which is, and we've talked about this on here before, right? Like rule number 1 of getting a divorce, you keep your kids out of it.
Right. Which will be part of an episode we do that will be like, so you're considering a divorce. And we'll talk about all the things that I think people need to think about and look at before they get into it. And then we'll pull an attorney in. But
your kid's not your therapist.
Yeah. So, but like now if I switched over, this is the part that I feel like I get so frustrated at. And I feel like I know there are exceptions to this, but they're rare. And because there are exceptions, people will say, well, there's an exception. I'm also the exception. I think, no, you are not.
Mm-hmm.
Not just dads checking out on kids emotionally and time-wise, but dads check out on kids in terms of like paying for stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm curious and I'll say pay for stuff, meaning child support. Either they don't pay it or they think it's not fair how much I have to pay. And I have some thoughts on that, which I'm sure someone can argue with me on. And then you can go look up online and find somebody who will justify you and agree with you because
you can always find someone to agree with you online.
But they also check out when it comes to things like we agreed to share the cost of medical bills or car bills or phone bills or whatever. So I'm curious first, why do you think that is? And how much do you feel like you see it? I feel like I see it a lot.
Yeah. Honestly, with the guys I work with, it hasn't come up a ton.
I don't think the guys are. Well, okay, go ahead.
What I hear more often is like, I'm not getting any heads up on it. Like they're going in and they're scheduling this, dental work or this doctor's appointment, and they've had it scheduled for months, and there's a fee associated with it, and no one tells me the cost until the bill is due, and now I'm supposed to come up with half of $1,200 on a Friday afternoon, and it's like, what the?
Although I would say, was that any different when you were married? Did you ever bother looking to see when the stuff was coming through in the bills? Just have stuff put aside for your kids' medical stuff.
Sure.
I get angry, dude. This makes me angry.
No, I know. And that's
sounds
the
like
funny
excuses.
thing. It is, but I also think it does speak to the communication aspect of it, right? And this is where the co-parenting piece becomes extremely important because, yeah, financially, sure, you should. I do tend to have a little bit of sympathy for the guys because it is simply cheaper having everyone under one roof.
Sure.
Now, I'm not in any way like I know full well women like
it's way worse for women
way
than it is
worse.
for men.
Like it's never like I'm not. This
not
isn't
never,
me.
But most of the time,
right? And this isn't me saying like I'm not trying to, but I do have some sympathy for it because
sure,
it's expenses that they haven't had to deal with, right? Not in the same way.
I'm going to come back on that.
Sure, I can already feel it. Yeah, I get they've had to deal with them, but it's I don't know. It's you're maintaining.
No, they're not anymore. Here's the thing. Go often, ahead. This is not always the case, but at least some of the times, if not often, you went from being a one-income household, right? Just you caring for everybody in the house, to now I pay for me and my kids, and my wife, my ex-wife now has a job. And yes, I still have to pay for my kids.
Right.
The same expenses. Like when you say dental stuff, I think, okay, look, you should know your kid's going to the dentist once every 6 months. You should also know there's a good chance your kid's going to have a cavity. So you should just be planning that once every 6 months, I'm paying for something.
Sure.
And like your kids go to school every year.
Yeah.
They need school clothes.
Right.
Your kid's turning 16.
Right.
This is all stuff that for some reason, when I see when they get divorced, it's like, well, that's not my thing anymore.
Yeah.
And it probably never was, but it should be. You cannot check out and say, I don't know what's happening in my kid's life. Well, then figure it out and put money aside for it.
Right.
Getting real upset.
Yeah, you are. And that's the thing. I think you're misunderstanding my point. Like,
I guess because I don't like it.
Like, no, I can think of.
I understand the sympathy. Like, I think I get that. It does suck.
Right.
But also,
I do know a couple of guys where it's like, no, they live in, at best you could describe them as awkward situations.
Yeah, of course.
Because making sure that they meet their child support responsibilities is so important to them.
Right.
They're willing to sacrifice some other things. And that I'm like, I have the deepest respect for that because I'm like, you are doing, it's 100% what you should be doing.
Right.
Right. Like, I don't have a lot of patience for the guy who says it's like, no, it is fair. I get it. And again, like to me, I think like I've seen it happen with a couple of them where the kids will assume that mom, and again, typically I work with guys, although I can think of, well, even still, all of this is stuff that would tend to filter through mom. Right. The kids assume mom is letting dad know about this stuff. Dad doesn't know to ask what he doesn't know. Right.
Yes.
And so dad ends up, again, like the kid assumes dad knows. And mom thinks, well, if dad wants to know, dad needs to ask his kid. And again, it's back to that, right? But what's the system that was established for however many years?
Right. But that's part of, like, I think even if that was the system established, that was like, like if you ask me right now, Rob, when is your kid's next dentist appointment? I'd say, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I also know if I get divorced, it's like that has to change then.
Yeah.
To just say this is how we did it, it's like, it doesn't matter. You are now a single parent.
Right. And that's like, I think part of why you feel like I'm on the opposite side of this from you is because like the one person in particular I can think of where this has come up a few times has like pretty much the work we've done is on him trying to make sure he stays involved in his kid's life.
Right.
And he comes to me and he's like, Mike, I didn't even, like, it never occurred to me. And I was like, right. Because that was always information that you got just because you lived in the house.
Right.
And he goes, right. And he goes, I mean, I know now. And I said, yeah. And it cost you that one. It won't cost you again. And he goes, no. He goes, I'm not missing this again. I'm like, I know.
Right.
And so I have sympathy for that guy because I think, right, everyone was relying on the old system because nobody thought hey, this isn't the same system anymore.
Yes.
And you can say what you want about the dads that you think it's their fault, but I think no, like I think the wife in this instance, I think no, she just doesn't. She very clearly said, no, I don't have to tell him this stuff anymore.
Sure.
And if he doesn't think to ask, that's his fault.
Right. Sure. And
I'm back to like, you don't know what you don't know.
I'm not interested in necessarily saying whose fault is this, because there's a flip side to this where there are women who's like, well, I'm not. If you were never involved as a dad before, why be involved as a dad?
Right.
Now?
I'm not going to make it easier for you.
I do think everyone should. Like, you'd have to say, okay, let's sit down and plan out the month together, even though we're divorced, or the week together. It's like, well, sorry, you still have kids. I know you thought you were away from this person, but you are not until you're dead. So sorry.
Yeah.
And that sounds very unsympathetic, but also I feel like I hear a lot of excuses about stuff that feels like also, it was just me breathing in heavy and being annoyed. And which I do, like, I feel annoyed at the idea of something. I'm not targeting any one person out and saying you're a bad dad.
Right.
And I can't even say I would do better. But I feel like this idea that I hear so many men take, that when I look at anecdotally and research wise, it's like, dude, women are worse off than you, period. Oh, yeah. So stop complaining about how much, like when they tell me how much their child support is, I think that is nothing.
Yeah.
Do you actually know how much it takes to raise a kid? And when it's like, well, why did this medical thing have to happen? Because you had a kid. It's not like your ex-wife was like, I wonder what thing, maybe I'll make my kid break his arm today.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, this just happens because you have kids. Stop thinking you don't have kids half the time. You have kids all the time.
Well, and admittedly, I do think there's a lot of guys who slip into the mindset of, right, like I'm just on my own now.
Yeah.
And so
I don't know that I wouldn't either.
They want to keep living a specific lifestyle, or they think, well, now I can get this stuff that I haven't been able to get.
Well, and
like I can get this motorcycle, or I can get this fun toy, or this
especially
thing that I want.
My wife was controlling before, and now I can do what I want.
Right. And it's like, no, you still, like, you're going to have to make sacrifices because you still have kids.
Right. Well, and I do understand there's a massive another. I just used the word another. There's darn it. I can't say another. There is
another.
No, I'm just going to say there's another level.
Well, that's just not a word.
It is now.
That and
physiology. No. Physiology is what I said.
There was physiology.
There's another level of this that I understand. It becomes way more difficult and complex when you end up getting remarried and you now have a blended family and you have multiple households you were trying to care for.
Yeah.
But part of this is ultimately, because we're already running out of time, but this is ultimately where I think in my brain this is going, is saying the frustration I have is that I know there are dudes out there who check out.
Yes.
I know there are dudes who are listening to this thinking, I didn't check out. But also, if you're honest, you can see where you did check out. Or if you're honest, you can see where you're not approaching your ex-spouse because you don't want to, or it's going to be a hassle.
That's what I was going to say. I do think there's, at least in my head, there's a slight difference between checking out.
Yes.
And not knowing how to engage.
Right. And that's true.
And so I think,
I'm speaking about checking out.
Right.
And checking out even financially. And the idea that, like, I understand that there are times when there are definitely ex-spouses, moms, who try to work the system to screw somebody else over financially. But generally speaking, what I've seen by far is that women can't scrape money together to make things work.
Yeah.
And then husbands feel like, well, this is my money.
Right.
And it feels like it's not. You have kids still.
For starters, to me, I think, and this is where it's frustrating to me when guys are like, well, what is she just going to hang out and live off my stuff? I'm like, dude.
Yeah, that cracks me up.
One, even if she had a job, and I can't think of personally that I know any divorced women that don't have to work.
Right.
And so the pay gap, the gender pay gap. No, they're going to get paid less to do the same work. Two, most of them, if they were stay-at-home moms, if they have a degree, they most likely don't have experience or haven't had experience in it in years.
Right.
And so they're not going to be able to start at a salary that matches their age and the age of their kids. And so, yeah, it's like, dude, no, they're going to get hosed every time.
Well, and this, I mean, I do feel like I recognize, well, I say that, like, to me, I think if this was me, I think it would be very hard for me. It would feel like I was cut out.
Mm-hmm.
And so then it feels like I'm paying for somebody else to live the life that I wanted that I don't have anymore.
Yeah.
And this is in a scenario in my head, I guess, where, I got divorced and it wasn't something I wanted, I guess. But I understand that too. Like, I know there's complexities to this. So I am speaking more to an idea rather than to someone in particular saying, you lazy turd.
Right.
And I do not think all men and all dads do this. But there is something that says, if you're married now, you should be taking more active involvement, not just in like your kids' lives in terms of school things they have or, tennis lessons, but in terms of like, well, when are their next dentist appointments and doctor's appointments? And so that you start to set a pattern that says we are all engaged in this and getting you guys to become the adults you want to be.
Right. What medications are my kids on?
Right. Yeah. So that if you get divorced, then it's already in place. Now, I'm not saying that like do that just in case.
Well, no, but that's the funny thing. I think, no, one, it does say something to your kids, right?
Right.
That you know those things.
Right.
Hey, Dad, when's my next dentist appointment?
Right.
Well, I don't know. Ask your mom.
Right.
Well, hang on. Let me check.
Right. And there are things that women would have to do the other direction too.
Sure.
I don't know. Ask your dad.
Right. And I mean, it goes both ways.
Right.
But my point was simply, no, it does say something to the kids when dad takes an interest.
Right. So yes. And I think as on the divorce side, even if you didn't do that and you are getting divorced, you are divorced. I think we do have this kind of like, yes, it sucks to get divorced. And I tell people all the time, look, if you're going to get divorced, if you're looking at like staying married versus getting divorced, you're looking at one pile of crap versus another pile of crap.
Yep.
Both are going to take a ton of work and they can both be a better spot, but it's going to take a ton of work.
Right. It's not to say that sometimes divorce is not the option that should be chosen.
Right. And so when you do get divorced, yes, there is a degree of release and relief, but you also, it's momentary because you have to recognize, I have to be a different kind of dad than I was.
Yeah.
I have to be involved in a different way than I was. And I don't think anyone thinks this. It's just behaviorally, it looks like this, that it's almost like I'm a dad half the time. No, you are a dad all the time.
Right.
So you need to be finding out, like texting your kids or whatever it is that you can do with your kids, or trying your best to see, how do I forgive my ex-wife or whatever it is, make amends so that we can have a good, like I've had some clients where the ex-spouses are sitting in the room together and they live like down the street from each other and they are friends that vacation together. And I think that is unbelievable.
And amazing.
Yeah. And remarkable. And I think everyone should do that.
Yeah.
Because your kids will be so much better. They were here for their kid.
Yeah. Which isn't to say, right, like, understand, we get that there are circumstances that can make that extremely difficult.
Oh, for sure.
And there are circumstances where I would cautiously say you probably shouldn't have that level of engagement.
Sure.
But again, at that point, I think, but when you hit that level, it's like, but then there's probably reasons why the kids shouldn't have that level of engagement either.
Sure.
And so we do get, but you're right. Like the couples that, the co-parenting that I've seen most successful, there's a great deal of mutual respect, even a level of friendship, maybe not vacation together level of friendship, but there's consistent communication. There is flexibility.
Right.
Like, hey, we're trying to do this vacation. It's supposed to be your kids' week. It's supposed to be my weekend with the kids or my week with the kids. Can you take them? We'll swap.
Right.
And like, I see some where one of the parents is extremely rigid and no, this is the weekend. And I've seen others where it's like, yeah, sure. Like, that's cool. I don't mind having them 2 weeks in a row.
Right.
Like, It'll let me go on this vacation that I've wanted to do. And,
right.
That's where I tend to see the most success with co-parents.
Right. So I look at all that and I think, like, in the end of this episode, I know I could keep going. And like I said, there are things I rant on because one of the things I get frustrated about when I watch parents divorce, I will tell them it doesn't matter anymore why you got divorced.
Yeah.
All that matters is that your kids come through this okay. You guys will be fine. You're adults. Figure it out. But your kids have to be okay. And then I watch all these parents, often usually dudes,
Wow.
that complain about, like, and I understand too, it's weird to, like, I put money into this thing and I never see any, it's like just putting money away.
Yeah.
That I never get.
Right.
And I don't get to see the outcomes. I don't get to see the outfits. I don't get to see that. It's like, yeah, that part does suck. Although if you create a good co-parenting relationship, you can see all of that.
Right.
But I would say, even though I know I got strongly worded on some of these things, and maybe I offended you.
You didn't offend me.
Not you. I'm speaking to the listener.
I was like,
which I would say my apologies, not my intent to offend. It is my intent to say this. I get that way because I feel like this matters. Stop making it sound like this is like, I mean, hey, it's hard for me. I think, okay, who is divorce not hard for?
Yeah.
But also I think if you were offended and you felt defensive, that should be a little trigger in your brain that says, what are you defending?
Off. Yeah.
Why are you defending yourself?
Yeah.
If you can look through this and say, I totally agree, then I think, cool, then you might be right on track.
Well,
but if you're saying, well, hold on, I think, well, take a look at yourself. No, I'm not talking.
Right. You're not saying that there might not be validity to their hold on.
Sure. And
right. Like we started this and you said, thing.
I don't, right.
I'm not speaking for all men. I'm not like, right. I'm not blanketing.
And it's not one-sided.
Yeah.
But it is me, because this is a podcast where I feel like, no, be better.
Yeah.
And I know it's easy for me to say I'm not going through it. And it is a very incredibly life-alteringly difficult thing to go through. But I still feel like that doesn't mean you can't be better.
Yeah.
So if you were offended, consider that the little pinprick in your heart that says, why? Is there something you need to change?
Yeah.
Now, that sounds like an easy thing. It's like, I got to walk in a room and say something offensive. Somebody be like, well, that's your problem.
Well, that's the thing. Like I said, right? It could be that the thing that you feel offended by is because you are the exception.
Yeah, maybe.
Or it could be that, yeah, there is something that Rob and I have not understood because we haven't been through this. And that's the one thing that I think both of us tell our clients is, look, I can't tell you what it's going to be like. I can only tell you it's going to be harder than you think it is.
Right.
That's the one thing I know about divorce. It will be much harder than you think it is.
And I will say too, if they're sitting in my office and complaining about this stuff, I will validate. That's good. That's another word I made. Validate. I will validate what they're saying, and say, like, and be able and sincerely be able to say, dude, this sucks. But I will also be able to say, knock it off.
Yeah.
Go pay for your crap.
Right. This is still the thing you have to pay for.
Your kids still need you.
Yeah. And that to me, like, as I think about what is it I would want someone listening to take away, although, like, admittedly, that idea of if you felt, and this is right, our hope, I think, every episode is that you do kind of take a look and say, where can I be better? Right. Where can I do differently? Even if it's not, even if you're not divorced, and even if you think I'll never get divorced,
right?
That's great. But chances are you're not as involved as you could be.
Right. And I am the worst offender of that.
Oh, sure. Like I'm not sitting here saying I am. I'm terrible at a lot of the stuff we've talked about today. But I do think it's, and we've both said it to clients, and you said it a couple of minutes ago, it's not about you, it's about your kid now.
Right.
Like when I've done divorce counseling with clients, I'm like, yeah, okay, we're going to mostly talk about how to interact with your kid, right?
Right.
Because you guys, like you said, you guys can figure it out. But because of the way kids internalize.
And they don't choose.
No.
Parents choose. We choose adult love. You
right.
don't choose love when you're a kid.
Right. And so because of the way they internalize, and because it's not right, even when they don't want to have a relationship with one of the parents, there is that connection that is always there no matter what. And it makes it really difficult. You the whole, well, I don't have a relationship with my dad, right? Until Father's Day, when you can't help but be reminded of the fact that you have a dad who's not a part of your life. And that's frustrating for one reason or another. And so knowing that about kids, you really do have to make sure and constantly reassure your kids, this isn't about you, right? Like this divorce is not about you. It's not about it's not your fault. It's, and your kids don't need the reasons. Typically they'll get to an age and you may choose to share them, but your kids don't need the reasons other than mom and I couldn't work it out. If if the husband cheated, your kids don't need to know that. Well, let me rephrase that. They don't need to know that from you. They need to probably know it from the guy who cheated or the woman who cheated. Like, I think but again,
that's a whole bigger conversation.
It's a whole complicated thing, but it is one of those where it's like, no, your job becomes making sure that your kids are there. And if you're a parent who hasn't been engaged, I will tell you, there is no age where I think it's too late to begin that relationship. Right. I don't care if your kid's 12. I don't care if your kid's 24. One, even at 24, the divorce is going to be hard on the kid.
Right.
Like, I don't care. It just is. And two, I don't care what kind of relationship you had with a kid in the past. It can be different if you want it to be. Your kid is going to appreciate interest. If you express interest in them, your child will respond. People love to feel like someone else is interested in them. So that's my takeaway.
All right, then.
Yeah. Felt a little rambly. It's fine.
Well, look, spacemen, if you've been offended, come back next time.
Oh.
Well, yeah. I say come back next time because I think that's what dudes do. We get in a fight, we punch each other in the face, and we're cool with each other.
Come back. We make jokes next time.
Yeah, come back and make jokes with us.
We'll laugh about the way you got punched in the face.
But also, as Mike said, consider that every episode should be you saying, all right, well, how do I become a little bit better in this thing?
Right.
And then catch us next time on the Manspace. Noise.
We hope you enjoyed the episode. Please remember to
rate
and
review.
Please, we desperately need it.